So let's start by taking a look at the template editor. So over from the marketing automation navigation area on the left, I'm just clicking in templates. And you can see there are two views of templates in actual fact. This is a grid view where we see quite usefully a thumbnail of each of the templates within our system. And with the thumbnail is the name of the template just printed there above it. And there's also a default subject line. So each template has a default subject line, but of course that template could be reused in future campaigns and you can enter whatever subject line you want to use on that occasion. The alternative to the grid view is the list view. So to invoke the list view, if I go to the top right hand corner, the actions button, you can alternate between grid view and list view up here. Now of course if you've got a significant number of templates, this is quite useful because it allows you to search through the templates that you're looking for. So for example, if I want to find any templates where the subject line contains the word act, I can type in that search text in the subject line field and click the filter button to the right of it where I can select the operator of that filter. So I'm looking for templates where the subject line contains act. So I'm just going to click contains and it narrows the field of view to templates that meet that search criteria. So I want to start by creating a new template. So like all things in AMA, up to the top right hand corner, the actions button is a good place to start. So under actions, new template invokes a dialog window asking me for some basic information about the template that I want to create. And the first thing it wants to know is, what do you want to call it? So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to call the template Demo123. Beneath the name is a drop-down list adjacent to the label type. If you're using the entry-level version of AMA, you won't see all these same options here. I'm using the enterprise version, so everything is available to me, and that includes marketing, sales, landing page. The difference is that marketing uses the drag and drop editor, and if I select marketing, there are a series of existing templates that I can use to choose from as a basic structure to begin the template building exercise. If I choose a sales template, now this might be a simple sales letter where I'd use the WYSIWYG editor. So this is effectively the, well, plain text or very simplified structure where I can just free type in text or copy and paste in HTML code. The third option there was landing page. If I was going to create a landing page, as mentioned earlier on, I can build effectively a form with questions that map to act contact fields, but the questions can sit within a liveried background which is constructed in the template editor. So if I was creating that background using my own custom color schemes and logos and livery, etc., I'd create it here as a type landing page, and then the form would sit within that landing page. But in most cases, marketing is where you would start to build a simple template. So Demo123, marketing, I'm going to use the drag and drop editor, and I'm going to select a start point from the drop down below. If I click on any of these options, let me show you what happens. So if I click on online fashion store, it gives me on the right a thumbnail for an email template that I might want to use. Now obviously I wouldn't be interested in using that image particularly, but it shows me a basic structure where there's a banner at the top, then some text and an action button, and then below that a placeholder for an image. And then it looks like the template breaks down into 3 columns below that. Let's just look at another one. Organic rainbow, not sure what that is. So again, it's broken down into a series of rows. Each one has a background color, but it looks like a 2-column presentation with alternating image on the left, text on the right, then text on the left, image on the right, and so on. I'm just looking for a structure that I want to use. So I might think, well, this is quite appropriate for the type of template I want to create. I'll select that as a start point and replace the colors with my colors and the images with my images and the text with my text and so forth. But for this exercise, I'm just going to go back to that very basic 1-column template to begin with. So click create and it will load that template into my editor ready to go. So you'll recall from the thumbnail that that template had a placeholder for some text at the top, then an image placeholder, then some more text and a button. I can now customize this to include my own content, or I can change the structure and layout of this template and introduce placeholders for alternative content, or remove everything that I don't want to include. So for example, this text block down at the bottom here, if I don't want that to be there anymore, I can just click on the text box to highlight it and click the delete dustbin and remove it. If I want to bring in a placeholder for some text to sit beneath this image placeholder, then I'm going over to the right hand side where you can see 3 tabs, and the middle one is rows. Now the rows are merely placeholders for content, and the top one is a very typical one. It would be a row that reaches across the full width of my template. Or alternatively, if I go down to this one, it's a row that includes 2 columns of equal width that I can bring into play, or the one above it, 2 columns but of asymmetric width. So it's just a question of choosing the style of the presentation of data, how you want it to appear. So let's use the 2 column of equal width row. All I'm doing is holding my mouse button down on there and dragging that over to the template and dropping it just beneath that blue line where I want it to appear. So now beneath my image placeholder, I've got a 2 column presentation here, and I can decide whether in each of these columns I want to include text, images or something else by going to the content tab. So text, images, button, there was a button there before if you'll recall. I can introduce dividers just to break things up, social media icons. If I want to put in some raw HTML code, I can introduce an HTML panel, or I can also introduce video as well. So we'll look at an example of that in just a moment. So let's assume that we want to have an image in the left hand side column, so I'll drag the image over, and text in the right hand side, so I'll drop that in. So we've got the basic structure. It's now time to put in our content, so maybe we'll start at the top with the header, and of course I can just overtype this. Now the text, the font styles can be amended in this dialog window that pops up, so every time I begin to change the text, this window is available. I can change the font style, the font size, I can use bold, I can italicize, I can underline, etc, etc. I can change font colors, I can do the text color and also the background to the text. And wherever you see a color palette, you can either select from that palette or you can use your own hexadecimal color references. So for example, if I go down to custom, maybe I want to use not the green from the palette, but the green that is exactly the same green as we use on our website. And if you know the RGB, you can type it in. I know the hexadecimal reference for our green from our website is 35AA35. So I can change that green to be not just a green that's a bit like our green, but our specific shade of green. If I want to put hyperlinks on there, let's just go into the panel below there. I can just type in some anchor text. So the anchor text is visit our website. And then I just click on the piece of chain link there, insert and edit a link. Typical for an anchor text is that what it does is goes to a web page, and I can just copy and paste or type in the web page here. But alternatively, a hyperlink can be used to open an email. So if the recipient clicks on the hyperlink, it opens a new email in their email client of choice, we can have it pre-fill the email address to come back to you. We can also pre-fill the subject line and the beginning of the message body if desired. I can also invoke a phone or SMS, so this is useful if the recipient is receiving the email on a mobile device, so they can click on a hyperlink, it can automatically begin to dial a phone number or send an SMS, for example. But we'll just leave it at URL for now. You'll see that that's just gone to a underlined hyperlinked blue, which is fairly standard, but over on the right hand side you'll notice that the link color can be customized as well. So if I want hyperlinks to appear in a different color, I can again select from palette, or I can just change it over here. Text color is defaulting to this gray, so I can adopt that or leave it as is. So the content block that appears on the right hand side where I see text color and link applies to the block that I'm working in, but looking at the three tabs, if I was to go to, let's just save that, and go to settings, the right hand tab, you can see that I can apply template wide background colors, foreground colors, a default font and link color. So maybe I don't want the link color to be just in that particular cell. I want links wherever they appear on the template to follow that same color structure. In this settings area, I can also control the width of the template, by the way. Okay, so I've got my banner header. You'll see it's got a grey background. Again, if I click on that background area, you can see on the right hand side the row background colour is this pale grey. There are a variety of different controls that you can apply to each component, but they're all pretty much intuitive. What you see is what you get. So if you scroll down, you can see I can put in column backgrounds, I can build padding around the cells, I can put borders around the cells, various different things. So you've a lot of control, but no coding is required. It's all push button, slider, click a switch, and the behaviors are controlled accordingly. Let's look at the component below, which is an image placeholder. So again, this has a grey background. Maybe I want to change that grey background and put in just a transparent background, so nothing behind it. But I now want to replace the image with something else. So if I click on the image, you can see that the image is set to automatically expand to fill the space available to it, or I can customize how wide that image will be by removing auto width and just using the slider to determine how large the image will be in its placeholder. But let's put an image in there. So in order to do that, change image, the blue button, takes me to my image library. Now the choices here are, I can upload a new image from my PC just by clicking the upload button and browsing to the file, or I can search for a free photo. So this is a link to free photo stock online where there are up to 500,000 images that are license free, and you can use them at your leisure in your email marketing campaigns. Of course, the images that are presented below are images that I've used previously, and I can reutilize those as well. So I'm just going to choose this one in the center, Act Page, and insert that image into the template. So you can see the image is automatically stretched to fill the width, but again, I can reduce that if I want to. You can also apply effects to the image. So perhaps it's a little too high for my purposes, I'd rather make it shallower. I can click on Apply Effects and More, and it opens up a simple image editor. Photoshop it isn't, but it's quite nice and easy to apply simple modifications to that image. For example, if I want to crop the image, I can click on Crop, and I can select from some predetermined formats, or I can just drag the buttons around and make it look the way I want it to look. So I want it to look a little shallower. Click Apply in the top right hand corner. There are a variety of other things I can do. I can overlay text onto the image, I can rotate it, I can apply some filters that change the way that image looks. I can apply frames and corners to the image, etc. And down at the bottom here with the slider, I can zoom the image if I want to as well. So when I'm ready, click on Save, and it will reintroduce the saved image back into the component. So you can see the modified image in the template. There are other controls on the right hand side whilst the image is selected, and those include alt text, which is sometimes quite useful if you're sending your email to somebody like an Outlook desktop user where images aren't presented by default until the recipient clicks the button to download images, but you can include alt text here which would be presented to the user to perhaps encourage them to download the image content. And then below that, of course, we can apply a hyperlink to the image. So if somebody clicks on the image, it can invoke a website visit, or as we discussed earlier on, it could open a new email, or if they're on a mobile device, it could make a phone call or send an SMS. Throughout the system there are special links, by the way, which are things like unsubscribe if you wanted to insert an unsubscribe link at that point through an image click, or if you wanted to include a link that allowed the recipient to view the email content on a web page, that kind of thing. You could also link to a file, by the way, so that's another form of hyperlink. So rather than send the visitor to a website or invoke an email or a phone call or an SMS, link to file, you could upload a PDF or something into your library, and when the recipient clicks on the link, it downloads the file onto their machine. That's used in conjunction often with the assets tool that we spoke about earlier on. Whereupon the user can download the file, but the system will track to what extent they've absorbed the content contained therein. So various different rows, various different components. One other thing actually that's worth pointing out on the images, if I scroll down to the bottom of the panel on the right with the image selected, you'll notice that there are controls to hide that image on a desktop or a mobile. You'll notice that there are controls that allow you to hide those images depending upon the device that the recipient is using to look at it. We'll take a look at that in a moment under preview, but in some circumstances you might choose to hide an image if it's being displayed on a mobile phone, because it maybe takes up too much of the screen and you want to get the message across without obscuring it with a large image. Let's look at the two components underneath that then. So we went into a twin column presentation. So on the left hand side there's a placeholder for an image, and browse, as it suggests, takes me into the image library, or I can just literally drag an image file from the desktop of my computer directly into that image placeholder as well. But let's just click on browse, and I'm going to bring in let's have a look, this image over here. Maybe I want to make the image a little smaller within that placeholder, so I'm just going to shrink it slightly, and then in the text block I can begin to type. You can use mail merge as well, of course, so if I want to personalize the content and say hi and then the first name of the contact, I can position the cursor where I want the mail merge field to apply and then click on merge tags. Now these are shortcuts to all the merge fields within ACT, so without the contact record, should I say. So that would include custom fields as well as any standard fields that come with the system. So I'm just going to choose first name. So hi, first name. I'm going to say how are things at, and then bring in the company name. Let me just paste in quickly some other text beneath this, and I'm just going to put a couple of hyperlinks in there. Check out our blog and link that to a hyperlink. So click on link as we did before. When I insert a hyperlink, it warns me that it does need a HTTP prefix, but it will put that on for me automatically. Okay, so that's beginning to look a bit more interesting. Another content component that I briefly touched on earlier on was button. So we could introduce a button by just dragging that on. In fact, what I'll do first of all is just put on a new row. Don't want that button there. I'm going to drag the button into that new row so it can occupy the entirety of that row. So maybe I'm promoting an event. So just above the button, I want to drag a text block because I want to describe the event and what the button is about. So if I type in, have you registered for our summer event? There's no time like the present. And then on the button itself, if I click on the button, I can control what that button looks like. So again, with the colour, you can see I can use hexadecimal reference as well. I want it to be my shade of green. The text colour is all the Fs, which is white. In terms of the width of the button, the button can expand to accommodate the text in it, or I can invoke the slider and I can have the button to be as big and bold and brash as I want it to be. So mine's quite a big button. And then of course you would need a hyperlink. So what's happening when people click on that button? And that could be anything. It could link to a landing page that you've created, or it could link to a web form anywhere else. It doesn't matter. It's just going to a hyperlink. There are some other controls I can apply around that button, whether it has sides, whether it has padding. So just visual controls. Right at the top of the configuration panel on the right is where I determine what I want to happen if somebody clicks on the button. It's defaulting to open a web page because that's the most common, but as per the other options, we can send an email, or if it's on a mobile device, make a call or send an SMS. So you put in the URL there, and then I can just save the template, and it's beginning to take on a bit more appeal now, I guess, with different components in there. Maybe I want to complete the picture by including a video component. So let's bring in another row at the bottom beneath the button. So it's a full screen width component, and then in the content tab I'm going to drag on video. Now the way that video works, of course, in email is that you wouldn't embed the video itself within the email. It would take up far too much space and be crying out to be trapped in a spam filter. So the way that we handle it is introduce the video with an image, which is effectively the first pane of the video, and then there's a play icon presented to the recipient, and when they click on the play icon, it opens the video in its native environment. So that would be YouTube or Vimeo typically. So if I click on add a video URL, you can see at the top right hand corner it's expecting me to put in there the hyperlink to a YouTube or Vimeo video. So I'm going to paste in a YouTube link, click the save button, and I should, if I scroll down now, see the first panel of that video introduced into the email with the play icon in front of it. There is some control around the appearance of the play icon. Over here on the right you can see it could be a round solid or an outline or rectangular, etc. So you can make different choices. I'm going to keep it as round solid. It could be light or dark. I'm going to make it light, and I can change the size of the play icon. I'm going to maximize it to 80. There are some padding controls you can apply, in the various customizations that appeared earlier on around images are also available here in the presentation of the video. For example, if I wanted to apply a border around the video, down here at the bottom I can determine the size of the border and the colour of the border. And when I'm perfectly happy the way things look, I can click to save. It might be that I don't want that video to appear, by the way, if somebody's looking at the email on a mobile device. And if that is the case, then highlight the video, scroll to the bottom, hide on mobile. So if we look under the actions menu at the preview, we'll see the video presented in its frame to desktop users, but to mobile users no video is presented. So let's just see how that looks on a desktop. So under the Actions button in the top right hand corner, I'm going to click on Send a Test, put in an email address that I want to send the test to, should I say. Click Send Test. You can send it to multiple people at the same time by putting in more than one email address and just separating them by a comma if desired. So here in my Outlook email client is the test email that I've sent to myself. And if I scroll down, there's the video placeholder. Click on the play icon and of course it opens up a browser and just begins to play the video immediately.